Well, we're in Psalm 31, and we left off yesterday with verse 11. I think so. Let me see. No. Verse 10 is where we left off. My bones are consumed. David is in a hard trial in his life. His son, most likely, his son is after him. It's toward the end of his life. There's a conspiracy that's risen up against him, and it is consuming him with grief. It seems like the conspirators are winning. All right. He has spent the first 8 verses declaring his trust in God, declaring his belief, his knowledge that he will ultimately be okay. He's been redeemed. He's going to be glad and rejoice. Verse 9, he starts to really unpack the hardship. He says, "Have mercy on me, Lord, I'm in trouble." And he begins to explain how the trouble is impacting him. We talked yesterday about being acquainted with grief. And if you didn't get to hear that devotion, then I hope you'll go back and listen to yesterday's devotion. But he says in verse 11, I was a reproach. So verses 9 and 10, he's talking about how it affects him physically and emotionally. But now he's going to talk about how this trial's affecting him relationally. And he's going to grieve. He's mourning to God. And that's one of the biggest takeaways from this psalm, is that he is taking his griefs to God. He's mourning to God. He's sorrowing in God's presence. And so he says, I was a reproach among all mine enemies. Now, this was a national pride thing, okay, that Israel was strong because of God. Israel was existing and thriving to God's glory. The point was they're supposed to let the whole world know that God is God. Well, in this moment, David says, "I'm a reproach to because of mine enemies." He says that the enemies are making fun of me. They're scorning me. They're winning. How does that glorify God? I imagine that was confusing for David because he understood the balance there, that Israel was God's nation and his way of showing himself to the world. So I imagine in this moment, David's saying, what happened? Where's God's glory? Why doesn't God care to show himself strong in my life and through our nation? And maybe I guess the 21st century application of that would be, we look at a situation that's unfolding in our lives and we think, how could God do anything good in this? Or we ask, how could God be glorified or magnified through this? And friend, there are many times that we don't have an answer to that question. And we would think, I'm just a reproach. I mean, I can't bring glory to God in this situation. This is just dark and no good thing. But that's never the case, okay? If you're a child of God, he is always working. When you can't see him working, he's working. When you can't measure his work, he's working. When you don't know what he's doing, he's still working. Being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. There's never a time that God isn't working. So you might feel like your life is just a reproach and that God is not getting glory, that even your slanderers, your conspirators are winning and they think your faith is a joke. That's how David felt. I was a reproach among all mine enemies, but especially, look at this, especially among my neighbors. Oh, now the relationships are getting closer. Enemies, now neighbors. And a fear to mine acquaintance, my friends. My friends didn't even want to be my friends anymore. Has that ever happened to you? Oh, I don't want to go down that road. Okay. So my neighbors and my acquaintances, they did see me. Look at this. They did see me without and fled from me. So they saw me and walked the other way. Oh, that's painful, especially when you're David and your motives are pure and your heart is pure and you're willing to do the right thing. You want to do the right thing. You love these people, your neighbors, your acquaintance, your family. They did see me and they fled from me. Now, notice something. This is important. David isn't forsaking God. He's lost his friends. He's lost his neighbors. He's lost his family. He's lost those that were loyal to him. He's alone in this moment. But he hasn't forsaken God, and he knows God is with him. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, you got to love me more than anybody else. You got to love me more than anything else. You need to know that your love for me and your connection to me is stronger than any earthly relationship. Jesus said that more than a few times. So, verse 12 gets even more painful. I am forgotten as a dead man out of mind. I am like a broken vessel. Now, it's interesting, the broken vessel concept. Until I went to Israel, I wouldn't really have known what that was all about. But clay pottery, clay vessels in ancient times were just very fragile. I mean, we've devised ways today of glass making and porcelain and other materials that are much more durable. I mean, still, if you drop it, it's going to break, right? But clay pots, they chip, they break, they crack very, very easily. They're very brittle. And so pottery in ancient Israel was very plentiful, kind of like paper plates and paper cups and napkins in our world, okay? In other words, it was as easy to find shards of pottery as it was to find trash, because that was the trash. And vessels would break, and they would just throw them out the window. I mean, and so it almost became like gravel streets. Broken pottery became the part of the dust work. We were at several city ruins where, as they're excavating, they're just finding piles and piles of pottery everywhere throughout these tells or unexcavated cities in the Holy Land, in Israel. And we were at one site, and they had thrown all the pottery shards into one big pile, big trash pile. And the guide said, as we got off the bus, he said, by the way, there's a pottery pile there and shards of pottery. You're welcome to take those if you want them. And everybody on the bus was like, what? You know, we get to go take an ancient piece of pottery like it was something really significant. And to us it was. But the funny thing is, to them it wasn't, because it's just like a pile of trash. It'd be like somebody, 2,000 years from now coming coming up to a landfill and finding a plastic cup, and the tour guide saying, help yourself to any of the plastic here. just a trash pile. So David says, I am totally forgotten. I'm like a piece of trash. That's how he feels, because people have thrown him away. People that he loved, people that used to love him, people have thrown him away, and he feels forgotten, and he feels like a piece of trash to those people. That is a really brutal place to be. It's a brutal feeling to have. But David knows that his God has redeemed him. He knows that he is in a good place with God, and that he will spin around with joy and gladness, that he will brighten up and cheer up. And but he's recounting to God how he really feels. I'm forgotten as a dead man. I'm like a broke. People have basically said, you're dead to me. Have you ever watched that show Shark Tank? You're dead to me. You're dead to me. It's really sad when people treat someone that way. You're dead to me. But it's also very common. And David is experiencing this. Verse 13, for I have heard the slander of many. I have a personal policy. I won't ever say something about someone that I won't say to them. So, if anybody ever reached out to me and said, I heard you said this, I would have no need to deny it, or to hide it, or to soften it. I might need to define and contextualize. I might need to clarify my intent of why I said that. But when I'm speaking about another person or another relationship, I'm very careful to choose my words in a way that I can account to what I said. I can account for what I said to that person. Um, what David is saying is he's being slandered, and the slander is finding its way back to him. And that's what it always does. People say things that aren't true about you. People that love you want you to be aware. In some ways they're spreading gossip, but in other ways they're watching your back. They're letting you know that person to your face is one way, but to your back is betraying you. They're sometimes they're trying to protect you from getting hurt worse, and that's what's happening to David right now. The slander is finding its way back to him. Fear was on every side, so the slander is making him fearful because the slander that he's hearing is what they're planning to do to him. While they took counsel together against me, they devised to take away my life. So the slander is coming back. Hey, David, they're saying this about you. They're planning to kill you, which brought fear to David on every side, he said. He just didn't know where to step. He didn't know where to look. He was worried every day. But look at verse 14. But I trusted in thee, O Lord, and I said, thou art my God. Oh, I so want to read verse 15. My times are in thy hands. But David comes right back around full circle now. Notice where he starts the psalm. He starts with, in thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. He declares what that's all about, who God is, who he is. He then explains what the trial's doing to him physically, what it's doing to him emotionally and psychologically, what it's doing to him relationally, the fear, the betrayal, the slander, the conspiracy, and the peril or the grief of feeling forgotten and thrown away like a piece of trash. But I'm putting my trust in you, God. I know you love me. I know I'm not forgotten with you. I know that you're going to lead me through this. I know that I'm not a piece of trash to you. So there's an identity struggle happening with David when he's forgotten, when he is out of God's hands. Not out of God's hands, out of hand. He's been dismissed out of hand of those that love him and those that once cared about him. And he's grieving, but he finds his identity in God. I know you've redeemed me. I'm going to trust you. You are my God. So friend, I don't know how today maybe impacted you. Maybe you have experienced some relational loss. Maybe there's some seasons in your life where someone threw you away and you feel like they've said, you're dead to me. Maybe you're praying for reconciliation. Maybe you're praying that those relationships will heal. I know I am in some cases. But until they do, your identity is in God. So rest in him today. Trust him. Love him. Walk with him. And you probably have some new relationships. You probably have some other people that to love, to invest in. So my challenge is to you today to invest into them.